The stagecoach rattled into Circleville, Utah, on a blistering August afternoon in 1876, and Clara Lawson pressed her face against the dusty window, wondering if she had made the worst mistake of her life. Her ribs still ached from where her father had shoved her against the kitchen table 3 weeks ago, the bruise finally fading to a sickly yellow that matched the desert landscape stretching endlessly before her. She had answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride because anything, even marrying a complete stranger, seemed better than spending one more day in her father's house, where his fists spoke louder than his words ever had. The letter from Samuel Porter had been brief and businesslike, promising her a home and security in exchange for her domestic skills and companionship. He had not mentioned love, which Clara found refreshing in its honesty. Love had never done her any favors. Her mother had loved her father, and it had gotten her an early grave. Clara had loved a boy once when she was 16, and he had laughed when she showed up at their meeting place with a black eye, saying she was not worth the trouble. So when Samuel Porter offered her a transaction instead of romance, she had signed her name to his contract without hesitation. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside a weathered building with a faded sign that read General Store. Clara gathered her carpetbag, the only possession she had brought from Pennsylvania, and stepped down onto the packed dirt street. The heat hit her like a physical blow, so different from the humid summers back east. Circleville was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of wooden buildings huddled together as if for protection against the vast emptiness surrounding them. Dust devils danced in the distance, and the mountains rose like ancient guardians on the horizon. "You must be Miss Lawson." The voice came from behind her, and Clara turned to find a man who looked nothing like she had imagined. Samuel Porter had described himself as a rancher in his prime, but the man before her was easily 60 years old with a prominent belly straining against his vest and small, calculating eyes that swept over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "Mr. Porter?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "That's right. You are prettier than I expected. That is good. I like a woman with some looks to her." He reached out and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the soft flesh above her elbow. "Come on, then. We have got a wedding to get to. The preacher is waiting." Clara tried to pull her arm free, but his grip tightened. "Mr. Porter, I would like to see where I will be living first. Perhaps we could speak for a moment." His face darkened. "What is there to speak about? You came here to marry me, and that is what we are going to do. Unless you are planning to go back on your word, because I paid good money for that stagecoach ticket, and I expect a return on my investment." The way he said investment made Clara's stomach turn. She had escaped one prison only to walk willingly into another. But what choice did she have? She had $17 to her name, and knew no one within 1,000 miles. If she refused to marry Samuel Porter, she would be stranded in this tiny town with no means of supporting herself. "I am not going back on my word," she said quietly, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Samuel released her arm and picked up her carpetbag. "That is what I thought. Now let us go, and try to smile. People are watching." The wedding took place in a small church that smelled of dust and old hymn books. The preacher rushed through the ceremony as if he had somewhere more important to be. There were no guests, no flowers, no moment of joy. When Samuel kissed her, his lips were wet and possessive, and Clara had to fight the urge to wipe her mouth afterward. She signed her name in the marriage register with a hand that trembled only slightly, and then she was Clara Porter, property of a man she had known for less than an hour. Samuel's ranch was 5 miles outside of town, a collection of ramshackle buildings that looked like they might collapse in a strong wind. The house was larger than the others, but no less run down, with shutters hanging at odd angles and a porch that sagged in the middle. Inside was worse. Dirty dishes were piled in the kitchen, the floors were caked with dried mud, and the smell of unwashed clothes and stale tobacco permeated every room. "I expect you to have this place cleaned up by tomorrow," Samuel said, tossing her carpetbag onto a chair. "And I will want a hot meal on the table at 6 o'clock sharp every evening. I do not tolerate lateness." Clara surveyed the disaster around her. It would take days to clean this house properly, not hours. I will do my best, Mr. Porter. You will call me Samuel now, and you will do better than your best. I did not bring you all the way out here to make excuses. He stepped closer, and Clara instinctively took a step back. Something flickered in his eyes, something that reminded her of the way her father used to look at her mother. The bedroom is upstairs. I will be up shortly. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She had known this moment would come, had tried to prepare herself for it during the long stagecoach ride, but now that it was here, she felt frozen with dread. She forced herself to nod and climb the narrow staircase to the second floor. That first night set the pattern for the weeks that followed. Samuel was not physically violent in the way her father had been, but his cruelty took other forms. He criticized everything she did, from the way she cooked his meals, to the way she cleaned his house, to the way she performed her wifely duties in the bedroom. Nothing was ever good enough. If his eggs were too soft, he would dump his plate on the floor and make her clean it up. If she took too long at her tasks, he would grab her by the hair and drag her to show her what she had missed. If she dared to speak without being spoken to, he would ignore her for days, treating her as if she were invisible. The worst part was not the insults or the rough handling. It was the complete absence of any acknowledgement that she was a human being with thoughts and feelings of her own. To Samuel, she was a possession he had purchased, no different from his horses or his cattle. He never asked her how she was feeling or what she thought about anything. He never thanked her for the meals she prepared or the house she kept clean despite its size and his deliberate untidiness. He never once looked at her with anything resembling kindness or affection. Clara had thought she understood what it meant to be treated without respect. But Samuel showed her there were depths of degradation she had not yet experienced. At least her father had occasionally shown moments of humanity, had sometimes apologized after his rages passed. Samuel never apologized because he did not believe he had anything to apologize for. In his mind, he was treating her exactly as a wife deserved to be treated. She had been married for 3 weeks when she met Gideon Hardy. It was a Tuesday morning, and Samuel had sent her into town to pick up supplies at the general store. She was grateful for the errand, even though the 5-mile walk in the September heat was exhausting. Anything was better than being trapped in that house with Samuel, listening to him complain about her inadequacies. She was standing at the counter waiting for the shopkeeper to fill her order when a man walked in. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar. His clothes were clean but worn, the clothes of a working man who took pride in his appearance but could not afford extravagance. But it was his face that caught her attention. He had strong, angular features and the kind of eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, missing nothing. Those eyes landed on her, and Clara instinctively looked away, not wanting to be caught staring. "Morning, Gideon," the shopkeeper said cheerfully. "What can I do for you today?" "Morning, Tom. I need some barbed wire and nails. Also, some coffee, if you have got any, that has not been sitting on the shelf since the war." The man's voice was deep and warm, with a hint of humor that made Clara glance back at him despite herself. Tom laughed. "Got a fresh shipment in last week. How much wire do you need?" While the two men discussed the particulars of the order, Clara found herself watching Gideon Hardy from the corner of her eye. There was something different about him, something she could not quite name. It was in the way he stood, relaxed but alert, and in the way he spoke to Tom, with genuine friendliness, rather than the barely concealed contempt Samuel showed everyone. "Here you are, Mrs. Porter." Tom set several wrapped packages on the counter, and Clara flinched at the name. She still was not used to being called that, still felt like an imposter wearing someone else's identity. She reached for her coin purse, but her hands were clumsy from nerves, and she dropped it. Coins scattered across the wooden floor, rolling in every direction. Clara felt her face burn with embarrassment as she dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather them before they disappeared between the floorboards. "Let me help you with that." Gideon was beside her before she could protest, his long fingers deftly capturing the runaway coins. He handed them to her with a smile that reached his eyes. "These things seem to have a mind of their own, do not they?" Clara took the coins from him, careful not to let their hands touch. "Thank you. I am sorry for the trouble." "No trouble at all." He stood and offered her his hand to help her up. Clara hesitated, then took it, letting him pull her to her feet. His grip was strong but gentle, and he released her hand immediately once she was steady. "You are Samuel Porter's new wife, are not you? I heard he had sent for someone." "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. Gideon's expression shifted, something like concern flickering across his face. Clara wondered what he saw when he looked at her. Could he tell how miserable she was? Could he see the bruises on her arm that she kept hidden beneath her long sleeves despite the heat? "Well, welcome to Circleville, Mrs. Porter. I hope you're settling in all right." Before Clara could respond, the door burst open and Samuel strode in, his face red with anger. "What is taking you so long, woman? I sent you to town 2 hours ago." Clara felt her body go rigid. "I am sorry. Tom was helping another customer, and I had to wait." "I do not want to hear your excuses." Samuel grabbed the packages from the counter and shoved them into her arms. "Get to the wagon, now." Clara hurried toward the door, but not before she saw the look that passed between Gideon and Samuel. It was a look of pure dislike, and Samuel returned it with equal intensity. "Hardy," Samuel said, the name sounding like a curse. "Porter," Gideon replied, his voice flat and cold. Clara did not hear anything else because Samuel pushed her out the door and toward the wagon. He did not speak to her on the ride home, but his silence was somehow worse than his usual tirades. When they arrived at the ranch, he threw the supplies on the ground and disappeared into the barn, leaving her to carry everything inside alone. That night, Samuel was rougher than usual, and Clara stared at the ceiling above the bed, trying to send her mind somewhere far away. She thought about the kindness in Gideon Hardy's eyes when he had helped her with the coins, the way he had offered his hand without any expectation or demand. It was such a small thing, such an insignificant gesture, but it had been the first time since arriving in Utah that anyone had treated her like a person deserving of basic courtesy. 2 days later, Samuel left before dawn to check on his cattle in the far pasture. He would be gone all day, he informed her, and he expected the house to be spotless when he returned. Clara watched him ride away from the kitchen window, waiting until he disappeared over the ridge before she allowed herself to relax. She spent the morning cleaning, working methodically through the rooms. It was nearly noon when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. Her first thought was that Samuel had returned early, and her stomach knotted with anxiety. But when she looked out the window, she saw Gideon Hardy dismounting from a handsome bay gelding. Clara dried her hands on her apron and stepped out onto the porch, confused about why he would be here. "Mr. Hardy, can I help you with something?" Gideon removed his hat, holding it respectfully in front of him. "Afternoon, Mrs. Porter. I apologize for showing up unannounced. One of your husband's cows got through the fence and ended up on my property. I brought her back." Clara looked towards the corral and saw an unfamiliar cow standing near the gate. "Oh, thank you. That was very kind of you." "No trouble. I was heading this way anyway." He shifted his weight, seeming uncertain. "Is Samuel around? I should probably speak with him about mending that section of fence." "He's out checking the herd. He will not be back until evening." Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how isolated they were out here, how improper it was for her to be alone with another man. Gideon seemed to realize the same thing. "I will just put the cow in the corral then and be on my way. I am sorry to have bothered you." He was turning to leave when Clara heard herself say, "Mr. Hardy, would you like some water? You must be thirsty from the ride." He stopped and looked back at her, and for a moment Clara regretted the offer. What was she thinking? Inviting a strange man to have water with her? But something in his face made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in a very long time. "That would be much appreciated, Mrs. Porter. Thank you." Clara went inside and pumped water into a clean glass, her hands shaking slightly. When she returned to the porch, Gideon had secured the cow and was waiting politely at the bottom of the steps, making no move to come closer without invitation. She handed him the glass, and he drank deeply, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. That hit the spot. "Thank you kindly." "You are welcome." Clara hesitated, then asked, You and my husband know each other?" Gideon's expression became guarded. "We have had some dealings. Our properties share a boundary." "He does not like you very much." "No, he does not." Gideon handed her back the glass. "Samuel and I do not see eye to eye on certain matters." "What matters?" Gideon studied her face for a long moment, and Clara had the unsettling feeling that he could see straight through her carefully constructed facade. How to treat people, mostly. How to treat animals. The basic principles of being a decent human being. Clara felt something crack inside her chest, a small fissure in the wall she had built around her heart. Here was someone who saw Samuel for what he really was, who did not pretend that his behavior was acceptable or normal. "Mrs. Porter," Gideon said quietly, "are you all right?" The question was so unexpected, asked with such genuine concern that Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" "Because you look like someone who has not been all right for a very long time." The tears were harder to fight now. Clara turned away, not wanting him to see her weakness. "You should go, Mr. Hardy. My husband will be angry if he finds you here." "I do not care if Samuel is angry with me. He has been angry with me for years, and I have survived it just fine." He moved closer, but not close enough to be threatening, just close enough that she could hear the sincerity in his voice. "But I do care if you are in some kind of trouble, if you need help." Clara shook her head. "I do not need help. I am fine." "You are not fine." His words were blunt, but not unkind. "I have seen plenty of people who are not fine, and you have got that same look they all have, like you are just trying to survive from one day to the next." A sob escaped before Clara could stop it, and then the wall crumbled completely. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed of her tears but unable to control them. She cried for the life she had left behind, for the life she had hoped to find, for the reality of what her existence had become. She felt something being pressed into her hands and looked down to find a clean handkerchief. Gideon had retreated several steps, giving her space, but his face was filled with a compassion that made her cry harder. "I'm sorry," she managed to say between sobs. "I should not be behaving this way." "You have got nothing to apologize for. Sometimes a person just needs to cry." He waited while she dried her eyes and tried to compose herself. "Mrs. Porter, I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear me. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything at all, you come find me. My ranch is 3 miles south of here, right up against the Red Cliffs. You cannot miss it. Day or night, if you need help, you come to me. Do you understand?" Clara looked at him. This stranger who was offering her a lifeline without expecting anything in return. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." "I know enough. I know that Samuel Porter is a cruel man who does not deserve a wife, and I know that you did not come all the way out here to be treated like property." He put his hat back on and moved toward his horse. "Just remember what I said. 3 miles south, up against the Red Cliffs." He rode away before Clara could respond, and she stood on the porch holding his handkerchief, feeling as if something fundamental had shifted in her world. For the first time since arriving in Utah, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Samuel came home in a foul mood that evening, complaining about the heat and the stupid cattle and the incompetence of his ranch hands. Clara served him dinner and endured his criticisms about the beef being too tough and the potatoes being undersalted. After he had eaten his fill, he shoved back from the table and informed her that he would be riding to Salt Lake City the next day to meet with a cattle buyer and would be gone for 3 days. 3 days. The words echoed in Clara's mind as she cleaned up after dinner. 3 days of freedom, of not having to walk on eggshells, of not having to brace herself every time he entered a room. She tried not to let her relief show on her face. Samuel left at dawn, and Clara stood at the window watching until he was out of sight. Then she did something she had not done since her wedding day. She smiled. The first day of his absence, she threw herself into cleaning, but this time she did it because she wanted to, not because she was afraid of punishment. She opened all the windows to let fresh air blow through the house. She washed the curtains and beat the rugs. She scrubbed the floors until they shone. The physical labor felt good, therapeutic, a way to reclaim some small measure of control over her environment. The second day, she decided to bake bread. Samuel did not like her bread, said it was too dense, but Clara had always been proud of her baking skills. She made 3 loaves, and the smell of them filled the house with a warmth that had been missing. She ate a slice slathered with butter while it was still hot, savoring every bite. On the third day, she was hanging laundry on the line when she heard a horse approaching. Her heart sank, thinking Samuel had returned early, but when she looked up, she saw Gideon riding toward the house. He had a large package balanced in front of him on the saddle. "Afternoon, Mrs. Porter," he called out as he dismounted. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all." Clara dried her hands on her apron and walked to meet him. "What brings you by, Mr. Hardy?" "I was in town this morning and ran into Tom at the general store. He mentioned that Samuel was away and that you might need some supplies." He lifted the package. He asked if I would mind delivering them, seeing as I was heading in this direction anyway. Clara frowned. "I did not order any supplies. Maybe Samuel did before he left?" Gideon shrugged. "Either way, Tom said they were for the Porter Ranch, and here I am." Clara suspected this was not entirely true, that perhaps Gideon had arranged this delivery himself as an excuse to check on her. The thought made her uncomfortable and touched in equal measure. "Well, thank you for bringing them. Would you like to come in for some water? I have fresh bread if you are hungry." Gideon's face lit up. "Fresh bread sounds wonderful, if you're sure you do not mind." "I am sure. Please, come inside." Clara led him into the kitchen, suddenly self-conscious about the state of the house. But Gideon did not seem to notice the shabby furniture or the worn floors. He set the package on the table and removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "Your house looks nice," he said, "very clean and welcoming." Clara felt herself flush with pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you. It needed a lot of work when I arrived." "I bet it did. Samuel's not much for housekeeping." Gideon accepted the slice of bread she offered him and took a bite. His eyes widened. "Mrs. Porter, this is delicious. This might be the best bread I have tasted in years." "You're just being kind." "I am being honest. My own baking skills leave much to be desired. Most of what I eat is either burned or undercooked." He took another bite, closing his eyes in appreciation. "This is perfect." They sat at the table, and for a while they just ate in comfortable silence. Clara could not remember the last time she had shared a meal with someone without feeling tense and anxious, constantly monitoring every word and gesture for signs of displeasure. "How long have you had your ranch?" she asked, wanting to fill the silence before it became awkward. 5 years. I came out here from Texas with my brother planning to build something together, but he got sick that first winter and did not make it." Gideon's voice was matter of fact, but Clara could hear the old grief beneath the words. "So I have been running the place on my own ever since?" "I am sorry about your brother." "Thank you. Daniel was a good man. Better than me in most ways. He would have liked you." Gideon smiled. "He always said I needed someone to keep me honest and make sure I did not work myself to death." Clara felt her cheeks grow warm. "Mr. Hardy, I am a married woman." "I know that. I did not mean anything improper by it. Just that Daniel appreciated people who were kind and decent. And you strike me as both of those things." He finished his bread and brushed the crumbs from his hands. "Tell me about where you came from. What made you decide to answer a mail-order bride advertisement?" The question was more direct than polite conversation usually allowed, but Clara found herself wanting to answer it. "I needed to leave Pennsylvania. My father was not a good man, and I could not stay there any longer. When I saw Samuel's advertisement, it seemed like a chance to start over." "And how is that working out for you?" Clara looked down at her hands. "I think you already know the answer to that." "I was afraid you might say that." Gideon leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Clara, can I call you Clara?" The sound of her first name in his voice sent a shiver through her. Samuel never used her first name, only called her woman or wife. "Yes." Clara, you deserve better than what Samuel is giving you. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you can do. Tears pricked her eyes again. That is a nice sentiment, but it does not change my reality. I am married to Samuel Porter, for better or worse. I made a vow before God, and I cannot just walk away from that. Even if staying is destroying you? The question hung in the air between them. Clara did not have an answer, or rather, she had too many answers, and none of them were simple. I should get back to work, she said, standing abruptly. Thank you for bringing the supplies and for the conversation. Gideon stood as well, but he did not move toward the door. I meant what I said the other day. If you need help, you come to me. I do not care what time it is or what Samuel might think. You come to me. You barely know me. Why would you put yourself at risk for a stranger? Because it is the right thing to do. Because I have stood by and watched Samuel mistreat his animals and his ranch hands, and I have told myself it was not my business. But I will not stand by and watch him mistreat you. I cannot. The intensity in his voice made Clara's breath catch. Promise me that if things get bad, you will come to me. I promise, she whispered, though she was not sure if it was a promise she would be able to keep. Gideon left, and Clara stood at the window watching him ride away. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the warmth from the afternoon sun seeping through. Something was growing inside her, something dangerous and wonderful and terrifying. She tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, just the natural response to being shown kindness after so much cruelty. But she knew it was more than that. She was starting to care for Gideon Hardy, and that was the most dangerous thing she could possibly do. Samuel returned that evening in worse spirits than when he had left. The deal with the cattle buyer had fallen through, and he needed someone to blame. Clara became the target of his rage. He found fault with everything, from the way she had arranged his clothes to the temperature of the water she had drawn for his bath. When she served him dinner, he took one bite and threw his plate against the wall, sending food and broken china flying everywhere. You are useless Ishnawanos, he shouted, his face red with fury. I paid good money for you, and this is what I get. Terrible food and a wife who can barely do the simplest tasks. Clara knelt on the floor, picking up the broken pieces with shaking hands. She had learned not to argue, not to defend herself. It only made things worse. Samuel stood over her, and for a moment she thought he was going to kick her. Instead, he grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked her to her feet. Pain shot through her scalp, but she bit her lip to keep from crying out. Look at me when I'm talking to you, he hissed, his face inches from hers. His breath smelled of whiskey and tobacco. Do you understand me? You are nothing without me. You are less than nothing. If I threw you out right now, you would not survive a week on your own. I understand, Clara managed to say, her voice steady despite her fear. He released her with a shove that sent her stumbling backward into the kitchen table. Clean up this mess and get out of my sight. I cannot stand to look at you right now. Clara waited until he had stormed out of the room before she allowed herself to cry. She cleaned up the broken dishes and the wasted food, each movement mechanical and precise. When the kitchen was spotless once more, she went upstairs to the bedroom and lay down fully clothed on top of the covers. She did not want to be in bed when Samuel came up. She did not want to risk him touching her tonight. Hours passed. She heard him moving around downstairs, heard the clink of a bottle against glass as he drank himself into a stupor. Finally, she heard his heavy footsteps on the stairs. She closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. He came into the room and stood over the bed. Clara could feel him watching her, could smell the alcohol on him. She kept her breathing slow and steady, praying he would leave her alone. After what felt like an eternity, he turned and left. She heard him stumble into the spare bedroom down the hall and collapse onto the bed there. Within minutes, his snores echoed through the house. Clara opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Gideon's offer, about his ranch 3 miles south against the Red Cliffs. She thought about what it would be like to get on a horse right now and ride away from this place, to show up at his door in the middle of the night and ask for help. But she could not do it. She was married. She had made a vow. And despite everything, despite the misery and the degradation, she still believed that vows meant something. She still believed that a person had to honor their commitments, even when those commitments were slowly killing them. The next morning, Samuel acted as if nothing had happened. He ate the breakfast she prepared without comment and left for the day without saying goodbye. Clara watched him go and felt nothing but relief. She was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard a horse approaching. This time it was not Gideon but Tom from the general store driving a wagon loaded with supplies. "Morning, Mrs. Porter," he called out cheerfully. "I've got your order here." Clara walked over to the wagon confused. "My order? I did not place an order." Tom pulled out a piece of paper and squinted at it. "Says here that Gideon Hardy placed an order on behalf of the Porter Ranch. Flour, sugar, coffee, some fabric, and a few other sundries. Is there a problem?" Clara felt her cheeks grow hot. Gideon had done this, had used his own money to buy supplies for her. It was inappropriate and kind and made her heart ache with emotions she had no right to feel. "No problem," she said quietly. Thank you, Tom." He helped her unload the supplies, stacking them on the porch. When he was finished, he hesitated, then said, "Mrs. Porter, are you doing all right out here? Some folks in town have been worried about you." "I am fine," Clara said automatically. "Please tell everyone that I'm perfectly fine." Tom did not look convinced, but he nodded and climbed back onto his wagon. "You take care of yourself. And if you need anything at all, you let us know." After he left, Clara carried the supplies inside and found a note tucked inside the flour sack. It was written in a neat, careful hand. "Clara, I know you did not ask for these things, and I know you might be angry with me for overstepping, but I could not stop thinking about you out here with Samuel, and I wanted to make sure you had what you needed. Please accept these as a gift with no strings attached. You do not owe me anything except the promise that you will take care of yourself." Gideon Clara pressed the note to her chest, tears streaming down her face. When was the last time someone had thought about her needs? When was the last time someone had done something kind without expecting anything in return? She could not remember. She hid the note in her carpet bag, tucking it away where Samuel would never find it. But she took it out often over the next few days, reading it again and again, memorizing every word. 2 weeks passed without incident. Samuel was not exactly kind, but he was less cruel than usual, focused on his cattle and his business dealings. Clara fell into a routine, finding small moments of peace in her daily tasks. She thought about Gideon often, wondered what he was doing, whether he was thinking about her too. She got her answer on a Sunday afternoon. Samuel had ridden into town for a meeting, and Clara was in the kitchen making preserves when she heard a knock at the door. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened it to find Gideon standing on the porch, hat in hand. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but I was wondering if you might need help with anything. I know Samuel is gone, and I thought maybe there were some chores that required an extra pair of hands." Clara knew she should send him away. She knew that having him here, alone with her, was dangerous. But the loneliness of the past weeks had worn on her, and she was so tired of being by herself. "There is a section of fence behind the barn that needs mending," she heard herself say. "If you would not mind taking a look at it." Gideon's face broke into a smile. "I would be happy to." He spent the next 2 hours fixing the fence, and Clara brought him water and watched him work. There was something mesmerizing about the way he moved, efficient and purposeful, treating even this simple task with care and attention. When he was finished, he came back to the house and Clara invited him to stay for supper. It was bold and reckless, but she did not care. She needed his company, needed to remember what it felt like to talk to someone who listened when she spoke. They ate at the kitchen table, and the conversation flowed easily. Gideon told her about his ranch, about the challenges of running it alone, about his dreams of one day building it into something bigger. Clara told him about Pennsylvania, about her love of reading, and her secret dream of learning to play the piano. "Why is that a secret?" Gideon asked. "Because dreams like that are foolish for someone like me. I will never have the money for a piano or the time to learn to play it. I do not think it is foolish at all. Everyone should have dreams, should have something to work toward." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Clara, you deserve to have beautiful things in your life. You deserve music and joy and all the things Samuel is denying you." Clara looked at their joined hands, at the way his fingers wrapped around hers, strong and warm and gentle. She knew she should pull away, knew that this moment was crossing a line that should not be crossed, but she could not make herself let go. "Gideon," she whispered, "this is wrong. I am married." "I know. And I would never ask you to break your vows or do anything that would compromise your honor." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I cannot stop caring about you. I cannot stop wanting better things for you. And if that makes me a fool, then so be it." They sat there for a long moment, hands clasped, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Clara heard the sound of a horse in the distance and jerked her hand away. "Samuel is coming back early. You have to go." Gideon stood quickly, grabbing his hat. "I will go out the back. He does not need to know I was here. Thank you for everything." Clara walked him to the back door, her heart pounding. He paused in the doorway and looked back at her. "Clara, I think I am falling in love with you. I know I have no right to feel that way, and I know nothing can come of it. But I needed you to know." Before she could respond, he was gone, slipping away into the gathering dusk. Clara stood in the doorway, her hand pressed against her heart, feeling as if the world had tilted on its axis. Samuel came into the house moments later, full of complaints about the meeting and the idiots he had to deal with. Clara served him the dinner she had prepared, and he ate without comment, not noticing that she had set 2 places or that there was enough food for more than one person. That night, as Samuel snored beside her, Clara lay awake thinking about what Gideon had said. He was falling in love with her. The thought filled her with terror and joy in equal measure. She was falling in love with him too, had been falling since the moment he helped her pick up those scattered coins in the general store, but what good could come of it? She was married to Samuel, bound to him by law and by God. Loving Gideon was not just foolish, it was dangerous. But knowing it was dangerous did not make the feeling go away. Over the next few weeks, Gideon found excuses to come by the ranch. He brought her vegetables from his garden. He fixed the sagging porch. He helped her move a heavy piece of furniture. Each visit was brief and innocent, but each one deepened the connection between them. Samuel seemed oblivious to what was happening right under his nose. He was too absorbed in his own concerns to notice the way Clara's face lit up when Gideon arrived, or the way she hummed to herself after he left. Or perhaps he simply did not care. To Samuel, Clara was a possession, not a person capable of having feelings of her own. It was early October when everything changed. Samuel had been drinking more than usual, his temper growing worse with each passing day. One evening he came home from town in a rage, having lost money in a card game. He blamed Clara, said she had brought him bad luck by being a terrible wife. "Everything has gone wrong since I married you," he shouted, grabbing her by the shoulders and shaking her. "You are a curse, a worthless, useless curse." "Samuel, please, you have been drinking. Let me help you to bed." "I do not want your help." He shoved her backward, and Clara lost her balance, falling hard against the kitchen table. Pain exploded in her side as her ribs connected with the edge. She gasped, struggling to breathe. Samuel stood over her, his face twisted with fury and something else, something that looked almost like hate. "Get up. Stop being so dramatic." Clara tried to stand, but the pain in her side made it difficult. She managed to pull herself upright, clutching the table for support. "You are pathetic," Samuel said, his voice thick with disgust. "I am going to bed. Clean up this mess." He stumbled out of the room, leaving Clara alone with her pain. She waited until she heard his bedroom door slam before she let herself cry. Her ribs ached with every breath, and she was fairly certain at least one was broken or badly bruised. She made her way slowly to the kitchen pump and splashed cold water on her face, trying to pull herself together. She thought about Gideon's offer, about his ranch 3 miles south. She thought about how much longer she could survive this, how many more injuries she could endure before Samuel did permanent damage. She made her decision. Moving carefully, Clara packed her carpet bag with her few possessions. She did not take anything that belonged to Samuel, just her own clothes and the money she had hidden away, the $17 she had brought from Pennsylvania plus a few dollars she had saved from the household money. She tucked Gideon's note into her pocket and took one last look around the house she had tried so hard to make into a home. Then she walked out the door and did not look back. The moon was bright enough to light her way, and Clara walked slowly, each step sending fresh pain through her side. 3 miles had never seemed so far. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on breathing through the pain, on not thinking about what would happen if Samuel woke up and found her gone. It took her nearly 2 hours to reach Gideon's ranch. True to his description, it sat up against the red cliffs, the buildings neat and well-maintained even in the moonlight. A lamp was burning in the window of the house, and Clara felt a surge of relief. He was still awake. She knocked on the door, and within seconds it opened. Gideon stood there in his shirt sleeves, his face transforming from surprise to concern when he saw her. "Clara? My God, what happened? Are you hurt?" "I fell," she said, the lie coming automatically. "I think I might have broken a rib. I did not know where else to go." Gideon pulled her gently inside and guided her to a chair. "Let me get some light so I can take a look." He lit another lamp and brought it close, his hands infinitely gentle as he examined her. "I'm going to need to check your ribs, if that is all right with you." Clara nodded, too exhausted and in too much pain to be embarrassed. Gideon carefully lifted her blouse just enough to see the bruising on her side, and she heard him draw in a sharp breath. "You did not fall. Someone did this to you. It does not matter how it happened. It matters to me." Gideon's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "This was Samuel, was not it? He hurt you." Clara started to cry, all the fear and pain and misery of the past months pouring out of her. "I could not stay there anymore. I know it was wrong to leave. I know I'm breaking my vows, but I could not take it anymore. I just could not." Gideon pulled her carefully into his arms, holding her while she sobbed. "You did the right thing. You did exactly the right thing. And you are not going back there, not ever." "But I am his wife. The law says I belong to him." "The law can go to hell. You do not belong to anyone but yourself." He pulled back and looked at her intently. "Clara, I meant what I said before. I love you. I know that is complicated and messy and probably impossible, but it is the truth. And I am going to take care of you, help you heal, and figure out what to do next. Together." "I love you too," Clara whispered. "I have been trying not to, but I do. I love you." Gideon kissed her forehead gently, then stood. "First things first. Let me wrap those ribs and get you into bed. You need rest." He treated her injuries with a competence that spoke of experience, wrapping her ribs firmly but not too tight. Then he led her to his bedroom, insisting that she take his bed while he slept on the couch. Clara was too tired to argue. She lay in his bed, surrounded by the scent of him, and felt safe for the first time in months. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then memory returned, and with it a jolt of fear. Samuel would have discovered her gone by now. He would be looking for her. Clara got up carefully, her ribs protesting the movement, but not as painful as they had been the night before. She made her way to the kitchen and found Gideon at the stove cooking breakfast. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Sore, but better." She sat at the table, accepting the coffee he poured for her. "Gideon, Samuel is going to come looking for me. I know I am ready for him. I do not want you to get hurt because of me." Gideon set a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. "I am not going to get hurt, and neither are you. Not anymore." They ate breakfast together, and Clara felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from her life. This was what it should feel like to share a meal with someone, to sit in comfortable companionship without fear or tension. After breakfast, Gideon hitched up his wagon. "I need to take you into town. We need to talk to the sheriff and to a lawyer. We need to make sure you are protected." The sheriff is friends with Samuel. He is friends with Samuel's money, but he is also a man who believes in the law, and what Samuel did to you is against the law no matter whose wife you are. They drove into Circleville, and with each mile Clara felt her anxiety grow. But Gideon kept up a steady stream of conversation, telling her about his plans for expanding his ranch, about the new breeding stock he wanted to buy, about his vision for the future. It was his way of distracting her, and she was grateful for it. The sheriff's office was in the center of town next to the courthouse. Sheriff Tom Hendricks was sitting at his desk when they walked in, and his eyes widened with surprise when he saw Clara. "Mrs. Porter, what are you doing here with Hardy? Does Samuel know you are here?" "Sheriff, I need to report that my husband has been physically abusing me. Last night he injured me badly enough that I had reason to fear for my life. I left his home and sought shelter with Mr. Hardy." Sheriff Hendricks leaned back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. "That is a serious accusation, Mrs. Porter. Do you have proof of this abuse?" Gideon stepped forward. "I can show you the bruising on her ribs if you need proof, but you should not need proof, Sheriff. You should believe a woman when she tells you she has been hurt." "I am just trying to get the facts, Hardy. No need to get your hackles up." The sheriff looked at Clara. "What exactly did Samuel do to you?" Clara recounted the previous evening's events, her voice shaking but steady. She told him about Samuel's drinking, about how he had shoved her, about the pain in her ribs. She also told him about the previous incidents, about the constant verbal abuse and degradation. "Marriage is complicated, Mrs. Porter," the sheriff said when she finished. "Sometimes spouses quarrel. That does not mean you can just run away." "She did not quarrel with him," Gideon said, his voice dangerous. "He assaulted her. That is a crime." "That is between a man and his wife." "No, it is not. If I punched you right now, you would arrest me. Why should it be any different just because Clara is married to Samuel?" The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Watch yourself, Hardy." Before the situation could escalate further, the door opened and a well-dressed man walked in. He was middle-aged with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Sheriff Hendricks," I heard raised voices. "Is everything all right?" His gaze landed on Clara and softened. "Oh my, you must be Mrs. Porter. My name is Robert Carlton. I'm a lawyer here in town, and I could not help overhearing part of your story." "Mr. Carlton," Clara said gratefully, "I think I might need your help." Robert Carlton proved to be exactly what Clara needed. Over the next hour, he laid out her options with clarity and compassion. She could file for legal separation, though the process would be difficult and expensive. She could press criminal charges against Samuel for assault, though the sheriff seemed reluctant to pursue them. Or she could simply stay away from Samuel and hope that he would eventually let her go. "My honest advice," Carlton said, "is to pursue both the legal separation and the criminal charges. Samuel Porter needs to understand that his behavior has consequences, and you need legal protection so he cannot force you to return to him." "How much would this cost?" Clara asked, thinking of her $17. "Do not worry about the cost right now. Let us worry about getting you safe first." They were still talking when the door burst open and Samuel stormed in, his face purple with rage. "There you are, you ungrateful wretch! I have been looking everywhere for you!" Clara instinctively moved closer to Gideon, who stepped between her and Samuel. "Stay back, Porter," Gideon warned. "You are not taking her anywhere." "That is my wife, Hardy. You have got no right to keep her from me." Samuel tried to push past Gideon, but Gideon stood his ground. "I have every right to protect someone who is being hurt. You are not going to touch her again." "Sheriff, are you going to let him talk to me this way?" That woman belongs to me, and I want her back. Now. Sheriff Hendricks stood slowly. Now, Samuel, let us all calm down here. Mrs. Porter has made some serious accusations against you. Accusations? She is lying. She fell, that is all. She is clumsy and stupid, and now she is trying to make me look bad. Samuel pointed at Clara. You are coming home with me right now, or I swear to God I will make you regret it. That sounds like a threat, Mr. Porter, Robert Carlton said calmly. Sheriff, I think you heard that threat, did you not? The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Samuel, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Mrs. Porter has the right to speak with a lawyer, and you are interfering with that. I am her husband. I have rights too. Your rights do not include threatening her or anyone else. Now leave, or I will have to put you in a cell to cool off. Samuel's face contorted with fury. This is not over, you hear me, Clara? This is not over, and you, Hardy, you had better watch your back. Stealing another man's wife is not something I'm going to forgive. I did not steal anyone. Clara made her own choice. Gideon's voice was steady, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. Samuel spat on the floor and stormed out, slamming the door behind him so hard the windows rattled. Clara found that she was shaking. Gideon put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. He is not going to let this go, she whispered. I know, but we will deal with it, together. Over the next few days, Robert Carlton filed the necessary papers for a legal separation and also pressed charges against Samuel for assault. The town quickly divided into camps, some supporting Clara and others supporting Samuel. It became clear that Samuel had more friends than Clara had realized. Men who saw nothing wrong with how he treated his wife, who believed that a man had the right to discipline his wife as he saw fit. But Clara also discovered that she had allies she had not known about. Several women in town came forward to offer their support, sharing their own stories of abuse and survival. Tom from the general store testified that he had seen bruises on Clara's arms. Even Sheriff Hendricks, despite his initial reluctance, seemed to be coming around to the view that Samuel had crossed a line. Through it all, Gideon was by her side. He protected her, supported her, and never once made her feel like a burden. Slowly, Clara's ribs healed, and with them something else began to heal too. The part of her that had believed she deserved to be mistreated, the part that had accepted cruelty as the price of survival, began to mend. One evening, about 3 weeks after she had left Samuel's house, Clara and Gideon were sitting on his porch watching the sunset paint the red cliffs in shades of orange and gold. They had fallen into an easy routine, living under the same roof but maintaining propriety. Clara slept in the bedroom, and Gideon slept on the couch. They cooked together, worked together, talked for hours about everything and nothing. I need to tell you something, Clara said, breaking the comfortable silence. I do not know how to properly thank you for everything you have done for me. You saved my life, Gideon. You gave me back my dignity and my hope, and I do not think I will ever be able to repay that. Gideon took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. You do not owe me anything, Clara. Everything I have done because I love you, because you deserve to be loved and protected and treated with respect. I have never had that before. I did not even know what it looked like until I met you. She turned to face him, her heart full of emotion she could finally express. You showed me what respect really means. You showed me that I am worth something, that my thoughts and feelings matter. You listen when I talk. You ask for my opinion. You never make me feel small or stupid or worthless. Do you know what a gift that is? You have always been worth something. Clara, Samuel just tried to make you believe otherwise. Gideon raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You are smart and strong and brave. You are kind and caring and beautiful inside and out. I see all of that when I look at you. Tears streamed down Clara's face, but this time they were tears of joy. I love you so much. Sometimes I think my heart might burst from how much I love you. I love you too, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Gideon pulled her closer, and Clara rested her head against his shoulder, feeling completely safe for the first time in her life. They sat there until the stars came out, mapping their future in whispered words and shared dreams. They talked about getting married once Clara's separation from Samuel was finalized. They talked about expanding the ranch together, about building a real home filled with love and laughter. They talked about children someday, about growing old together, about all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that make up a life. It was not an easy road ahead of them. Samuel continued to make trouble, spreading rumors and trying to turn people against Clara and Gideon. The legal process was slow and frustrating. There were days when Clara wondered if she would ever truly be free of her first marriage, ever truly be able to start fresh. But through it all, she had Gideon, and that made all the difference. 6 months after Clara had walked away from Samuel's house, the judge finally granted her legal separation on the grounds of cruelty and abandonment. Samuel tried to contest it, but too many witnesses had come forward with stories of his violent temper and abusive behavior. The judge also ordered Samuel to pay Clara a small settlement, money that came from the bride price he had originally paid for her passage to Utah. Clara stood in the courthouse, holding the papers that declared her free, and felt like she could finally breathe. Gideon was beside her, his hand warm in hers, and when they walked out into the spring sunshine, she felt like she was being born anew. "What do you want to do first?" Gideon asked, his eyes dancing with happiness. "I want to marry you," Clara said, "right now, today. I do not want to wait another moment." Gideon laughed, the sound full of pure joy. "Then let us go find a preacher." They were married that afternoon in the same church where Clara had married Samuel, but this time everything was different. This time Clara wore a dress that a friend had lent her, pretty and clean and chosen with care. This time there were witnesses, townspeople who had come to support them and celebrate with them. This time when the preacher said the words, Clara felt their weight and their beauty, felt the solemnity of the vows she was making. And this time when her husband kissed her, it was gentle and reverent and full of love. The reception was held at the general store, with Tom and his wife providing cake and coffee for everyone who wanted to toast the new couple. Clara stood in the center of the celebration, Gideon's arm around her waist, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She had come to Utah expecting nothing but survival, and instead she had found love and respect and a future bright with possibility. As the sun began to set, Gideon took her home to the ranch that was now their ranch, to the house that was now their house. He carried her over the threshold, and she laughed at the old-fashioned gesture. "I want to do this right," he said, setting her down gently. "I want you to know that you are cherished and honored and loved. I do know that. You show me every single day." Clara wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. "Thank you for teaching me what respect means. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being brave enough to leave. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for loving me back." Gideon kissed her again, deeper this time, and Clara felt her body respond in ways it never had before, anticipation instead of dread, desire instead of fear. Their wedding night was everything Clara had never known it could be. Gideon was patient and gentle, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and wanted. He asked permission before touching her, checked in with her constantly, made her pleasure as important as his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, and Clara marveled at how different intimacy could be when it was rooted in love and respect rather than ownership and control. "Are you all right?" Gideon asked, stroking her hair. "I am more than all right. I am happy." Clara propped herself up on her elbow and looked at him, at this man who had changed her entire world. "I did not think happiness was possible for someone like me." "Someone like you deserves all the happiness in the world, Marino." Gideon pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." The years that followed were not without their challenges. Samuel eventually left Utah, unable to tolerate seeing Clara happy with another man. The ranch required hard work and long hours, and there were times when money was tight and the future uncertain. But through it all, Clara and Gideon faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each passing season. 2 years after their wedding, Clara gave birth to a son. They named him Daniel, after Gideon's brother, and Gideon cried when he held his son for the first time, overcome with emotion at this tiny life they had created together. Clara watched her husband cradle their baby with infinite tenderness and felt her heart swell with love. Daniel was followed by a daughter 3 years later, whom they named Rose, and then another son 2 years after that, whom they named James. The house that had once been so quiet filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing, with the chaos and joy of a growing family. Clara proved to be a natural mother, nurturing and patient, but also firm when necessary. She taught her children to read and write, to be kind and respectful, to stand up for themselves and others. She made sure her daughter knew that she was valuable and worthy of respect, that she should never accept treatment that made her feel less than human. She made sure her sons knew that strength meant protecting those who were vulnerable, not dominating them. Gideon was equally devoted to their children, spending hours playing with them and teaching them the skills they would need to run the ranch someday. He showed them by example what it meant to be a good person, what it meant to treat others with dignity and compassion. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Clara had a head for numbers and organization, and she took over the bookkeeping and business side of things while Gideon handled the physical labor and livestock management. They made decisions together, valuing each other's input and expertise. They argued sometimes, as all couples do, but they argued fairly, never resorting to cruelty or manipulation. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Gideon surprised Clara with a piano. He had been saving for it in secret, working extra jobs and selling surplus cattle, determined to give her the dream she had once told him about. When Clara came home and found it sitting in their parlor, she burst into tears. "You remembered," she said, running her hands over the polished wood. "Of course I remembered. You deserve music and beauty and all the things that make life worth living." Gideon wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You deserve to have your dreams come true." Clara learned to play, practicing whenever she had spare time, which was not as often as she would have liked, but was enough. She played for her children in the evenings, filling their home with melodies. She played for Gideon on quiet nights when the children were asleep. And sometimes she played just for herself, for the pure joy of creating something beautiful. As the years passed, Clara thought less and less about the dark time in her life before Gideon. The memories faded, losing their power to hurt her. She had built a new life, a good life, and the woman she had been when she first arrived in Circleville felt like a stranger. But she never forgot the lessons she had learned. She never forgot what it felt like to be treated without respect, to be made to feel worthless and invisible. And she made sure to treat everyone she met with kindness and dignity, knowing how much such treatment could mean to someone who was suffering. She became involved in the community, helping other women who found themselves in difficult situations. She opened her home to those who needed shelter, offering them not just a place to stay, but also support and understanding. She worked with Robert Carlton to help pass laws protecting women from domestic violence, using her own story to show why such protections were necessary. Gideon supported her in all of this, proud of the woman she had become, the strength she had found. He often told her that she inspired him, that her courage in the face of adversity had taught him what real bravery looked like. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they sat together on their porch, just as they had so many years ago, watching the sunset paint the red cliffs in shades of orange and gold. Their children were grown now, Daniel helping run the ranch while Rose attended school in Salt Lake City and James apprenticed with a blacksmith in town. The house was quieter than it had been, but it was still filled with love. "Do you ever regret it?" Clara asked, leaning against Gideon's shoulder. "Taking in a broken woman with nothing to offer but problems?" Gideon laughed and kissed her temple. You were never broken, just bent. And you offered me everything, Clara. You gave me love and partnership and a family. You gave my life meaning and purpose. The only thing I regret is that I did not find you sooner. I think we found each other exactly when we were supposed to." Clara took his hand, feeling the calluses that came from years of hard work, the strength that had always been tempered with gentleness. "You taught me what respect means, Gideon. You showed me that I was worthy of love and kindness. You gave me back myself. And you taught me that love is not about possession or control. You taught me that the greatest gift you can give someone is to see them for who they truly are and love them anyway. Or rather, love them because of who they are." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, their hands clasped together, two people who had found in each other everything they had been looking for without even knowing they were searching. Clara thought about the young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach so many years ago, desperate and afraid, willing to marry a stranger because she thought she had no other choice. She thought about how lost that woman had been, how little she had valued herself. And then she thought about the woman she had become, strong and confident, surrounded by love and respect. She had built a good life, not just for herself, but for her children and for the community around her. She had taken her pain and transformed it into purpose, had turned her suffering into strength. The journey had not been easy. There had been moments when she had wanted to give up, when the weight of everything had seemed too much to bear, but she had persevered. And Gideon had been beside her every step of the way, showing her through his actions what true partnership looked like. As they grew older, they only grew closer. They worked side by side, building their ranch into one of the most successful in the territory. They celebrated their children's achievements and supported them through their struggles. They became grandparents and then great-grandparents, their family tree spreading and flourishing. Through it all, Gideon never stopped treating Clara with the respect and love he had shown her from the beginning. He never took her for granted, never stopped appreciating the gift of her presence in his life. And Clara never stopped being grateful for the day she had walked 3 miles in the moonlight to knock on his door, the day she had chosen herself over obligation, freedom over fear. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire town turned out to celebrate with them. There was a party at the church, with food and music and speeches honoring the couple who had become pillars of the community. Their children and grandchildren gathered around them, and Clara looked at all the faces she loved and felt her heart nearly burst with joy. "Speech!" someone called out, and the crowd took up the chant. "Speech! Speech!" Gideon stood, helping Clara to her feet beside him. They faced their friends and family, these people who had supported them and loved them through 5 decades of life together. "I do not have fancy words," Gideon said, his voice still strong despite his age. "But I want to say thank you to all of you for being part of our lives. And I want to say to my wife, the woman who has made every day of the past 50 years a gift, that I love you more today than I did the day we married. You are my best friend, my partner, my everything." Clara wiped tears from her eyes. "And I want to say to my husband, the man who showed me what love really means, thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for respecting me when I did not respect myself. Thank you for giving me a life beyond anything I ever dreamed possible. I love you with all my heart, and I always will." They kissed, and the room erupted in applause and cheers. It was a perfect moment, a crystallization of everything they had built together. Clara lived to be 83 years old, surrounded by family and love until the very end. Gideon held her hand as she took her last breath, and even though his heart was breaking, he was grateful for every moment they had shared. She had been the love of his life, his partner in all things, and he knew that no man had ever been as blessed as he had been. After her death, he would often sit on their porch in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the red cliffs in shades of orange and gold, and he would feel her presence beside him. He would remember the first time he had seen her in the general store, the way she had looked so lost and alone. He would remember the night she had knocked on his door, bruised and afraid, but still brave enough to ask for help. He would remember their wedding day, the birth of their children, the 1,000 ordinary moments that had made up their extraordinary life together. And he would whisper to the wind, "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for letting me show you what respect means." Gideon lived 3 more years after Clara's death, and when he finally joined her, their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone was simple but carried an inscription that said everything that needed to be said. Here lie Clara and Gideon Hardy. They loved each other with respect and devotion, and they built a life that honored both. Their story became a legend in Circleville, passed down through generations as an example of what love should be. People told their children about the mail-order bride who had never been treated with respect until a cowboy showed her what respect truly meant. They told about how she had found the courage to leave an abusive marriage, how she had rebuilt her life, how she had transformed her pain into purpose. And they told about the cowboy who had seen a woman in need and had offered her not just shelter but dignity, not just protection but partnership. They told about how he had loved her with patience and kindness, how he had valued her thoughts and opinions, how he had made her feel worthy and seen. It was a love story for the ages, but more than that, it was a story about the transformative power of respect. It was a reminder that how we treat others matters, that small acts of kindness can change lives, that everyone deserves to be valued and honored. The ranch still stands today, run by Clara and Gideon's descendants, who carry on their legacy of hard work and compassion. And on quiet evenings when the sun sets over the red cliffs, painting them in shades of orange and gold, some say you can still feel the presence of 2 souls who loved each other so deeply that their love transcended even death itself. Their story began with pain and fear, with a desperate woman taking a chance on a stranger's kindness, but it ended with joy and fulfillment, with a life built on mutual respect and unwavering devotion. It proved that it is never too late to start over, never too late to find love, never too late to discover your own worth. Clara had arrived in Circleville believing she was worth nothing more than the bride price Samuel had paid for her passage. But Gideon had shown her that her worth could not be measured in dollars or in service or in obedience. He had shown her that her worth was intrinsic, that she deserved respect simply because she was a human being with thoughts and feelings and dreams. And in showing her that, he had not just saved her life, he had given her the tools to save herself. That was the real gift Gideon had given Clara, the real lesson of their love story. Respect was not just about being treated kindly. It was about being seen as a whole person, about having your autonomy honored and your voice heard. It was about partnership rather than ownership, about collaboration rather than domination. It was about recognizing that love without respect was not really love at all, just a pretty word masking uglier truths. But love with respect, love that valued and honored and cherished, that was something worth fighting for. That was something worth building a life around. And Clara and Gideon had built a beautiful life, a life that stood as a testament to what was possible when 2 people came together as equals, when they lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down, when they chose love and respect over fear and control. Their love story was not just about them, it was about everyone who has ever felt worthless, who has ever been made to feel small, who has ever wondered if they deserve better. It was a message of hope, a reminder that respect is not a luxury but a necessity, not something to be earned but something that should be freely given. And it was a call to action, a challenge to treat others the way Clara and Gideon had treated each other, with kindness and dignity and unwavering respect. Because in the end, that is what matters most. Not wealth or status or power, but how we treat the people around us, whether we make them feel valued or diminished, seen or invisible. Clara had learned this lesson the hard way through suffering and pain, but she had also learned it through love, through the patient, consistent respect that Gideon had shown her every day of their lives together. And she had passed that lesson on to her children and grandchildren, creating a legacy that extended far beyond herself. So when people in Circleville told the story of the mail order bride and the cowboy, they were really telling a story about the best of what humanity could be. They were holding up an example of love done right, of two people who had found each other against all odds and had built something beautiful together. And they were reminding everyone who heard the story that respect matters, that kindness matters, that how we treat others has the power to change lives in ways both big and small. That was the legacy of Clara and Gideon Hardy. Not just a successful ranch or a large family, but a living example of what it meant to love someone well, to treat them with the dignity and respect that all human beings deserve. And it was a legacy that would endure long after they were gone, passed down through the generations, inspiring others to choose respect over cruelty, love over fear, partnership over domination. Because in the end, that is what true love looks like. Not grand gestures or passionate declarations, but the quiet, consistent act of treating another person as if they matter, of seeing them, hearing them, valuing them. Clara and Gideon had understood that. They had lived it every day of their marriage, and in doing so, they had created something rare and precious, a love that had transformed not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Their story ended not with tragedy or separation, but with fulfillment and peace, with two people who had loved each other well and had built a life that honored that love. They had shown that happy endings were possible, even for those who had known great pain. They had proven that respect was not just a nice idea, but a practical necessity, the foundation on which all healthy relationships must be built. And so their story lived on, told and retold, a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt trapped or worthless or invisible. It was a reminder that change was possible, that love existed, that respect mattered. It was the story of the mail-order bride who had never been treated with respect, and the cowboy who had shown her what respect truly meant. And it was a story that would never be forgotten.